Why is it that there's such a deficiency in financial literacy with kids today? And is it real, or have we been just convinced that kids are stupider today when it comes to money than the previous generations? Or is it an actual thing? Are they missing something in their education or in the support they get from their families? The family's too busy to actually provide that support. What does the evidence suggest?
I don't know if I can speak to the evidence, but I think that we've actually become more aware now of these gaps potentially, and more open to having that conversation. So potentially it just wasn't spoken about as much when I was a kid. You're not as aware of it being a problem until you get to this point. If you think about a challenge now that some financial planners have, is that their clients are reading all of these things that are available at your fingertips. All these things about the markets or what you should and shouldn't be doing, the rise of the finfluencer. So there is such an awareness, and then it's trying to find the right information. But if you think 20 years ago, that wasn't something that was readily available for mum and dad. That information wasn't out there. So, in my opinion, I think it's always been there, but it just wasn't made as aware of.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners at Banqer and Financial Partners.
This is the Fine Answers podcast. I'm not going to say the episode number because I get in trouble for doing that when we want to change the order, but our guest today is Lucy Gaff, Distribution Manager at Netwealth. Lucy, you've made it you made it the short way down to Geelong this morning.
Yes.
You've gone the long way a few times previously. How do you, tell me again, like it's not that hard to get to Geelong, but how did you manage to find yourself on Old Geelong Road?
Old Geelong Road. I rely on Google just as a little bit of a safety net. And I think this is something I could learn in life in general, to trust your instincts. But it took me on a detour. I cannot actually tell you why, but I thought perhaps there were roadworks last time. Tried to take me the same way today, and I ignored it and trusted my instincts.
It's funny how reliant we've become on technology, isn't it? It's almost like that instinct that you've got in your that is native in your body is kind of blunted because of technology. It's supposed to make us more efficient, isn't it?
I think so, but I think it can encourage autopilot too much. And not actually thinking for yourself. It's kind of, I got home, how did I get here, for example? So I try not to use it if I can, try to remember, because you do just look at what's 200 metres, not the street name or not your surroundings. Yeah. So as a lesson for me, I know how to get to Banqer without Google next time.
Corner of Gordon Avenue and Packington Street. You can't miss it. Now, Lucy, we talked a little bit off air about what we wanted to talk about today. Now, for those uninitiated, those people that haven't met you, obviously you're well known to the Banqer team. Some people won't know who Netwealth are, but I think the most important thing, the thing that I really wanted to touch on, I know this is in your wheelhouse, is why is there such a deficiency in financial education and literacy in the current generation? Is it real? Is it perceived? And what can we do about it as, I suppose, product providers, or educators, financial advisors and parents, and also kids? What can we actually do about it to make sure that we fulfill that gap? So hold that thought, and I'm going to come back to you personally. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your build up to your current role with Netwealth.
Well, I'm not actually a Victorian local. Originally, I grew up in Queensland, and as a background, grew up on a farm out in regional Queensland, and moved to Brisbane basically when I was 18 years old. So left school and got out into the big smoke.
And this is on your grandparents' farm, is that right?
It was, yes. Yep. But only lived there until maybe middle of high school, and then lived in a thriving metropolis of Dalby. It's about 12,000 people.
So is it Dalby, did you say?
Dalby, yes.
D-O-L-B-E?
It's actually D-A-L-B-Y.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like Dalby Digital, no. So let's say, a cotton cattle farming kind of wheat region. If you've heard of Toowoomba, people generally, that's how I introduce it to those that don't know me, because they can locate that or have heard of it before.
Do you have fond memories of your upbringing in that region?
I do. It's interesting. I'm definitely a city girl now, and I couldn't go back. But there's something quite special about growing up in a regional area and a farm, and the kind of the experiences that you have. It's if I'm biased, I mean, you guys are from Geelong, so I can say it, but I probably have a bit of a personal preference to my regional clients. I think that we just cut from a slightly different cloth. There's a different way about how you've grown up and been taught to interact with people. Maybe there's more of an openness because it is, a small area, so there's less distance between you and you're actually your community is a little bit broader and not as siloed as it might be in the city.
I have a sense of that with our sort of Goulburn Valley clients. We've got a fairly large client base in Shepparton, and it's just a different sense. It's a different feel. It's a different pace. Sometimes it feels like a different world. But so you grew up in or near and around Toowoomba. You went to school. Whereabouts did you go to school?
Just the local high school, co-ed. That was the one state school we went to. We did get afforded a lot of opportunities for a regional town. There was I went on a school band trip to the US when I was 16.
Yeah, what did you play? What instrument?
Clarinet.
Yeah, of course.
I no longer play it, but we got to go to Disneyland, perform there, go to San Francisco, San Diego, LA. So it was very cool. And then I decided after that trip that I was too cool for band and left at that point. So I got what I needed out of it, I guess. And then, left school and worked full time. So I actually didn't go to university.
Now, you went to the School of Discipline at McDonald's,
Yes,
is that right?
Correct,
Yep.
yes.
School of Process and Discipline.
Absolutely. I worked probably 20 hours a week at least when I was in school, thinking, earning money is so great. That's what I want to do. And I was already in kind of a leadership role, and I thought, well, I enjoy this. I know it. Let's give that a crack. And had some big aspirations to work in the Golden Arches head office, but I probably decided 3 years after school that I wanted a little bit more consistency and not working nights and weekends and having, people yell at you as an 18-year-old about missing their fries, maybe more of a corporate world. So I ended up at the bank. So being from Queensland, Suncorp Bank, lots of jobs opportunities there for entry level and starting out. So imagine that's just different bank opportunities down here. So I started out resetting passwords for people for their internet banking. That was my first gig.
How long ago is that?
13 years.
Okay.
13 years ago.
So internet banking was around that long ago?
Yes, okay. Surprisingly. No, and people weren't very good at using it at that time. Some interesting calls at that point. But I probably had to start an entry-level role, but I quite quickly outgrew it and moved into a couple of other roles. So helping people with their home loans and personal loans and how to manage that, and then working in a branch as well, which was a really interesting experience for me. For anyone that's heard of Fortitude Valley, I worked in the branch in there, and there's an interesting collection of people that come in as your clientele.
Now, you obviously your childhood has sort of expanded from the farm through to school, travelling overseas, working at McDonald's, working in the bank. I think you mentioned in some of our discussions previously that you had an interesting interaction with a financial advisor at the branch that kind of informed you about the importance of money and finance. Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. I still to this day tell that story, and so much respect for this advisor. Look, back in your world where the banks were in financial planning, a part of my remit and KPIs was to refer to the financial planner. So I sat down with him one day and I said, tell me more about what you do. How can I find a reason to refer the client to you? What do I need to know and talk to them about? So he sat down and he drew me the most basic diagram. He said, all right, Lucy, this is your house. Here's your car, you insure that. Well, here's your income for the next 30 years. is that insured? I think that's all it took for me. I thought, wow, how do people not realise how important this is? And so that really stemmed a really keen interest in it. When then another financial planner worked in the firm, he actually had a friend that was looking for someone to work for them, and I thought, that sounds really cool. That sounds really, like you can really help people, and something I want to be a part of. So that hence leaving the bank probably 6 to 12 months after that to go and work for a financial planner.
That analogy of your greatest asset being yourself, I think, is lost on a lot of people. And even in the insurance context, yes, it's we insure our homes, we insure our cars, we insure our dogs now, yet there seems to be this reluctance to protect the asset that is most important to your household, which is your ability to earn an income and support the people around you. But even, I think, the extension of that from you being your own biggest asset, I think flows into this conversation around education and the fact that you can... I think it's imperative on us as individuals, as parents, and as we start to educate our kids, that we start to invest in them as an asset, their knowledge as an asset, so that they can sort of hold themselves to a reasonable standard when they're starting to make decisions around buying their first home, having a family, investing. So let's fast forward a little bit to this conversation around, let's talk briefly about who Netwealth are, and then let's have a sort of a deep dive into sort of financial literacy of Australian children.
Yes, so Netwealth, so as some context, I'm a business development manager. So my role is to work with financial planners to utilise our platform for efficiency and how you might use your client, invest your client's money. So what are we? We're a superannuation investment platform. We are fast becoming one of the largest super funds in Australia as well. But essentially, a financial planner can choose to invest your funds. They're essentially your assets on our platform. We have reporting and admin capabilities, client engagement tools, and a lot more from there.
So Netwealth only super, the platforms only in superannuation, or they're non-super platform investments as well?
In non-super investments as well. We do have then some self-directed, sophisticated clients that utilise us as well. So because we do only do purely platform, we take a really keen interest in providing insights and research back to the advice industry and two probably key elements. One, which is really topical, is technology. So we run an advice tech report, which we've been running for 7 years, that captures trends in the market. So we can, help advisors on what do I do next? What is everyone using? What do I need to be really aware of in technology? And how can I leverage that to, provide better outcomes for our clients and business? And our second part of our research is what we call advisable Australian research. So we survey your everyday Australians, some that are advised, some that are not advised. We've done some really interesting research over the years looking at providing advice to women, your emerging affluent clients, so looking at your millennials with money, and our latest research, we've partnered with a business called The Lab, and they do some behavioural science research with us, where it looks at the value gap and how advisors can show value to their clients and actually keep them for the long run. So some really interesting insights there. And then on the point of financial literacy, there's a program that we sponsor, Banqer.
That's Banqer with a Q, isn't it? Banqer?
Correct, yep. Yes. They're born out of New Zealand. And so we actually sponsor about over 100,000 students, Netwealth does. So that looks at aiming middle school. What the program does in practice, we've had the opportunity as staff to have team competitions, and so we actually get to see what it does. I think it's really cool, and I wish I had something like that when I was in school. If I think back, you get to learn your tax file number and to apply for your tax file number and these really basic things. But this actually, as a virtual classroom, gives the teacher the remit to give everyone the opportunity to apply for jobs in the classroom. They can buy properties with their income. They can invest their money. They can take out insurance on their assets. The teacher will then make sure that the kids are filling their responsibilities so they actually receive payment into their banker accounts.
So it sounds a little bit like Sims. My kids are playing Sims. It sounds like Sims, like you're creating a virtual world, but it's around finance and it's gamified. So
Correct.
it's gamified to give the kids a sense of achievement and understanding, or achievement as they're actually sort of learning. So they don't feel like they're being preached to. They're actually actively involved.
Which is really powerful.
I might put a placeholder there on Banqer. I just want to come back to that initial question and maybe your thoughts around, and maybe the research gives some insight into this. Why is it that there's such a deficiency in financial literacy with kids today? And is it real, or have we been just convinced that kids are stupider today when it comes to money than the previous generations, or is it an actual thing? Are they missing something in their education or in the support they get from their families? The family's too busy to actually provide that support. What does the evidence suggest?
I mean, I don't know if I can speak to the evidence, but I think that we've actually become more aware now of these gaps potentially, and more open to having that conversation. So potentially it just wasn't spoken about as much when I was a kid. It wasn't, you're not as aware of it being a problem until you get to this point. If you think about a challenge now that some financial planners have, is that their clients are reading all of these things that are available at your fingertips. All these things about the markets or what you should and shouldn't be doing, the rise of the finfluencer. So there is such an awareness, and then it's trying to find the right information. But if you think 20 years ago, that wasn't something that was readily available for mum and dad. That information wasn't out there. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's always been there, but it just wasn't made as aware of because potentially the resources were not as at your fingertips, or this information wasn't flying around to confuse you as much or lead you down a path that you think is right for you, but really it's not for your personal circumstances.
Yeah, it's almost like ignorance was bliss, that not knowing. And we're now in a world where it is like information overload. We're sort of spoilt with choice, and there's almost a sense of decision fatigue, particularly for adults. But the thing that worries me, if I'm looking at it from a client perspective, is clients who are parents and are looking out for their kids are genuinely concerned about how their kids will survive in the future, how they will have the wherewithal to be able to manage their cash flow, how they will get enough money together to put a deposit on a home, and what the future actually looks like for them. So there's sort of economic uncertainty together with sort of a lack of education gives people a sense that there's a gap in education. I think the gap is real.
Absolutely.
My view is that the gap is real, and to your point, we're probably more aware than we ever have been before about the areas that we could improve. The challenge is to, I suppose, not be waiting for someone else to give us the answer. This is that idea of personal responsibility, whether it be in the household, because I know that in looking at some of the sort of literature around financial literacy, there's a real emphasis in many parts to say, well, the government should do more. There should be more structured programs in schools, and it should be government and state driven. And I agree to some extent that should be the case. But at the end of the day, we're all autonomous humans, and we have the ability to sort of take control. And the challenge, to your point of disseminating information, is if you can find the great source of information, you can then make your own informed choice. And I think that's where some of the research and the programs that Netwealth support and that and promote and encourage are a great resource for those parents and also the kids out there that want to make sure they're set up for success.
That's it. And another part of that is how do you spread awareness of tools that are available that are free or that you can offer to your clients or to the children of your clients to give them a nudge to make it easy, because there is so much out there. There are even so many tools and apps for budgeting.
So let's talk about some of those tools. So you mentioned Banqer. I put a placeholder there, but let's go back to that, and then maybe that as an education program and as a sort of an inset for school education, what else do you see in terms of free tools and resources that people can use, either parents or kids?
So what we identified is that whilst we were supporting school-age children with Banqer and providing that financial literacy, that when you look at the wealth journey, the gap in where we had input was on that emerging client, someone that didn't have enough money to go to a financial planner or needed budgeting help or advice. And we came across this amazing platform, Flux. They run a podcast. I like to listen to it. It's about 6-minute episodes 3 times a week where they talk about things that are happening in the market and certain companies that are listed.
So who's it targeted to? Who's Flux targeted to? The parents or the kids?
Really the kids. Yep. I'd say your emerging clients. But I think that the content can be relevant for anybody. They also then have an app. So on their app, it provides you with tools for budgeting, understanding your credit score. Think a masterclass. You mentioned buying your first property. What does that look like? How do you go about that? And so the tools that they offer in that platform, we saw a real opportunity there to provide, to help them provide a solution also to financial planners in offering something for your clients. So we actually acquired them, Netwealth acquired them late last year, and they run a program called Flux for Business, which means that businesses like Banqer Britain can actually partner with them to offer that to your clients or to children of your clients. But if you're just an everyday person on the street, you can download their app. There's a lot of content in there that is free, and then you can pay for a premium version to have access to.
Is this the Flux Win It Money app?
That's
Is that
the one.
Yep. Okay,
yes.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
And
sorry, you go.
You mentioned gamification before. They've nailed that in making it engaging.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I mean, there's so many apps, there's so many things that gain sort of attracting people's attention. If it's not compelling, then people just won't do it.
No.
The challenge is to hit kids at both angles, actually, have good mentorship, but also make it exciting for them at the same time. What other free resources are out there for kids and for parents?
I mean, in terms of budgeting apps, there's the sky's the limit, isn't there? And there's so many of the finfluencers that are taking on those runs too. Even MyGov has a great tool to go through budgeting and downloading everything that you can.
I think Money Smart's got a bunch of calculators. There's a bunch of free calculators on there. And even thinking about some of the programs that we use in here, we've partnered with Frollo, or Money
Yes.
Partners powered by Frollo, to give people real, live cash flow insight into their situation. It's so invaluable. I mean, for the longest time as advisors, we would ask people about their awareness of their cost of living and their expenses. And it's something that if people aren't financially literate, if they haven't been shown how to budget, if they don't know the difference between income and expenses and surplus and deficit, it's like a heart, it's a grind. And it is probably one of the most painful things, but also one of the most important things. It's really hard to make informed financial decisions about anything if you don't know what your cash flow's doing. So educating people around, or kids particularly, around how they actually manage their money, I think is super important. The other thing, as you were talking about, trying to upskill a generation of people to understand more about their money and their sort of future debt and investments. I think you mentioned that there's a band of people. How did you describe them? The people that can't necessarily afford advice. What was the terminology? Emerging. Yeah. So it's a real issue. There's a significant issue of people that desperately need advice. They need education. They need a pathway to when they will have some money that requires some advice and can afford to get some advice. But there's gap, and we've identified that gap in here at Banqer Britain. And one of the ways that we've kind of alleviated that is to really encourage our clients, the parents, of one of the best investments they can make is the investment in funding their their kids to get some advice. And it might be funding them to get the app. It might be funding them to get just some discipline around cash flow management. It might be funding them to have an hour conversation with one of the advisors that can point out, income, assets, liabilities, insurance, estate planning, and give them that sort of lift. And I think without some sort of a freemium service or a low-cost alternative for education, it makes it really difficult, because those emerging clients get to 30, they've got some money, but they've got no skills or context and no structure on how they actually deal with it. So, the parallels are pretty obvious.
Absolutely. And I mean, the cost for you to provide advice has only increased as well. So that makes it harder to potentially service than that lower end. I do see obviously some advisors where that's what they specialise in, those young working professionals, but then at the same time, that's only someone that earns over a certain amount of money and that can afford advice as well. So definitely the gap is I think that we're finding ways, but there's still a long way to go. And I think someone might not want to listen to their parents, they might want to listen to the app, use the app that they want them to provide. So it's really about finding something that works for you as well. Some people don't actually, there needs to be as automated as possible. I follow a lot of influencers that come up and you know what the algorithm's like. As soon as you've clicked on something related will appear. So you always have a really good selection of choice, and things are continually kind of coming up. But anything that's automated and can be the least manual intervention as possible is what works for everyone, because they're always too busy to do anything about it.
Yes.
Being the key word, but I don't think you can be too busy to have that focus and attention. But if I think back to the knowledge that I have, if I didn't work in this industry, I'm not sure that I would have it. I don't think it would be, I don't know what my position would be like potentially, or the importance that I would have potentially of some of these things we talk about in terms of investing in yourself, investing in insurance, protecting yourself. So I think in some of the work that I do for the FAAA, which is a financial advice association in Australia.
Now you're on the board of the FAAA, is that right? Or
just in the Melbourne chapter. So we we volunteer to help with events and networking with financial planners. But another part of that is looking at the next generation of advisors. So
you're the chair of the Next Gen Committee, is that right? So explain to me a bit about what that involves.
So really, this committee is about empowering the next generation of advisors. So ways to provide education and I think connections for them, because what happens in an industry event is all the business owners are invited, and they all networking together, and that's the audience. So how do we find an audience? How do we find a stage for these people in client service or associates that are not the decision maker in the business? How do you connect them at a young age and give them this like community so that they stay and that you've got more advisors in the future? I don't have the numbers, but in speaking to some of the heads of the financial planning and those programs at the universities, like at Deakin, a lot of the people that come through actually have come through on a joint. It's a double major of accounting and financial planning.
Yep.
So they don't know anything about it. It's just that then they go, oh, actually that is interesting. Let's keep going. So I also think there's this lack of understanding of what financial planning is.
100%.
Which comes back to how do you even at a younger age explain some of these things, like before you've even left school. As I said, I didn't know what life insurance was. I didn't know what any of that was before. And sometimes people that need help the most don't have a family or upbringing where they had, I want to say, a luxury of those kind of protections or having those relationships in place with the financial planner. So how do we continue to spread that at the school and university level to understand the importance, but also because what you guys do is so amazing and awesome, and there's not enough new entrants coming in to do that job because I just don't think they know about it.
So practically, what do we do about it? So practically, how do we increase the number of advisors? How do we increase the financial literacy? Like, we've talked a couple of things, but if you had to sort of, I don't know, 3 or 4 key things that we need to do as an industry or as financial advisors or as parents listening, you know, what should we be doing?
I mean, I think as parents listening, it's sit down and have a hard conversation with your kids about money if you don't. You see some amazing examples of people that do. And there's, as I said, there's so much content online that you could use ChatGPT. It's not hard. Then for financial planners and our industry as a whole, it's how do you connect more with your high school students and with schools? How do you get into their job fairs? How do you have the opportunity to, with schools in the local area to go and tell them about what financial planning is, and or if you're an advisor, Netwealth sponsors Banqer that can go into a school. There's no cost to you. We sponsor that for students, and that gives the kids something to go home and talk to their parents about as well.
Okay, so let's talk practically. I've got 5 kids. They go to a private school here in Geelong. They go to Caninia International College, and Matt Barron's probably listening to this. So Matt's the principal. If I wanted to encourage Banqer, the education program, into the school as a financial advisor, what would I do?
We have information online, and all you need to do is submit an inquiry as a teacher. So the financial planner sends a link, has an information pack about what Banqer does, and you just need to fill in a very, very quick online contact form, and then they'll reach out to you and go from there. It is middle school, so it's not your high school, it's like middle school, so those grades between 5 to 7. But definitely the ease of it is there. I'll make sure I put we have a link in the file show notes as well. But it's super simple. Everyone has computers in the school these days. I didn't when I went to school. It makes me feel old, but it's all done within the classroom. And I think as well, if you're a teacher listening, you don't have to be introduced by a financial planner either. Netwealth, Banqer can be Googled easily to find the program. Or then if you are passionate about it, you've seen it and you enjoy it, then obviously there are opportunities to look at the education program outside of what we sponsor as well.
So if Banqer and those programs are so well operated and run and so successful, what is the hesitation? Why is it not in all schools? Like, why is it not there? Is there a pushback from schools to include external curriculum in the program or not?
I couldn't answer that, but I think it's awareness of what's available as well. I think a big part of it's awareness. But then, is it what the government or the school curriculum sees as the right information to be providing as well? So I haven't heard of pushback when it's been offered before, but also you
just haven't been on enough podcasts and shared the vision of what it offers.
Hopefully this is it.
Of course, this is going to go viral.
We can double those sponsored children.
Lucy, on the sort of education front and tools, is there anything else that you think that Netwealth is supporting in terms of financial literacy, or any other key takeaways from the sort of the work that Netwealth has done?
I think, as I said, Flux, something I suggest everyone has a look at and take a listen to the boys on their podcast too. They're the tools that we've started with, right? And we're not the only ones, right? So I'd say, as simple as what even some of our industry counterparts have, or some of the other retail counterparts, there's so much available. The research that we tend to do does tend to sway towards financial advisors and how you can help your clients and where those gaps are. So I think that in the introduction of having Flux within our network is amazing, and it's a great start, I think, for us to engage that next cohort of people that are not seeking advice. I'm really excited to see where that'll go from there. I think, again, for myself, working for a business that can take these kind of initiatives is amazing, because we don't have to, right? But we're ideally trying to help our end client and our advisors that are supporting them in having other solutions to bridge the gap for the next generation.
Yeah, and I can tell you, being on the ground at the coalface of conversations with clients, it's clear everything you've said about the gap that exists is what we feel in reality when we're sitting with clients. But I think there's a genuine intent for our clients to want to know how they can support their kids. And I think there is having sort of 5 young children myself, I know that there is curiosity around how they make better use of the money they earn, and invest, and think about how they operate in the world as they grow up. So I think if we can all do a much better job, whether it be as parents, whether it be as kids, whether it be as financial advisors, and educating our clients, but also providing a pathway for those people that maybe can't afford to get advice, because if you can find them early and you can give them the tools and equip them so that they are financially literate, when they do come to the point of making significant financial decisions in their life, those decisions will be good ones. They won't be ones that are catastrophic and cause them to ruin their financial life. They'll in fact enhance their financial life. So, Lucy, I want to close with just maybe a rapid fire question for yourself. So you've sort of spanned everything from growing up on the farm with your grandparents to working at McDonald's, working in the bank, now working with Netwealth, educating people around financial literacy. What's the best bit of advice you've ever received, and what was it, and how have you used it, and have you passed on that pearl of wisdom to someone else in your journey?
When you say advice in any scope of life or around finances,
it can be It can be anything you like. So in whatever context you want to take, what's the best bit of advice, financial or otherwise, that you've received that you've applied in your life?
That is a good question. I mean, if anything, I think the story I mentioned to you, just about thinking about yourself from that financial planner, if I'm honest, the shape that had on what I chose to do next in my life and career, that's probably one, I'd say from the top of my head, one of the best ones, because it's something that slaps you in the face and makes you realise something that is right in front of you, but you just never thought about. And I've had I then went away in my early 20s and had numerous conversations with my friends about it, who all thought, I don't need to enjoy myself, or these. That's not important to me. I'm too young. So if you think about how you can impact 1 or 2 people with knowledge that's been shared, then they continue that conversation with 1 or 2 people. It's sometimes those small things will have a rippling, whilst not earth-shattering effect, will make a small change in potentially a lot of people outside of the ones that you've shared it with as well. Yeah,
I think that idea, and we've said it a couple of times, but you are your own biggest asset, both financially, but also in the education and knowledge that you invest in yourself. So that's a nice way to close things out, Lucy. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for finding your way to Geelong, and I'd love to have you back on. I know we touched on technology in the industry. I know you've got a bunch of other topics that we can probably deep dive into, but on this topic, I think it's really pertinent at the moment. It's very relevant. And for any of those clients out there listening, we'll make sure that we link to Flux and Banqer and to Lucy's details if you want to get in contact with her, or if your financial advisors out there listening to the podcast. I know there's plenty. So, Lucy, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. And I look forward to a round 2 in the near future.
Thanks, Jay.
Cheers. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter @BurkeBrittonFP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Banqer and Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS licence number 232706.